Live from Ottawa. It's Saturday night. I'm here with Bill Sourour.
Yes, and the terrible, I do a terrible Trump, so for anybody who's expecting. I'm no Alec Baldwin, but I know something about code, so hopefully that'll be helpful.
Well, I think that's what people are coming for, not for the impressions.
Good.
So we're thrilled to have you here. Very quickly, I just want to tell everybody that this guy is the real deal. He's been working as a developer for like 20 plus years. He's written a great number of exceptional articles on Medium. I think 3 of 2016's top articles, at least 3, maybe 4 were from Bill. And the one we're going to be talking about primarily tonight is finding time to become a better developer, which I've linked to in the notes below. And I've got 1,000,001 questions about this article. If people who are watching live want to jump over and kind of skim it while they're watching, go for it. But Bill, why don't you tell us a little bit about this article and what inspired you to write it?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, thank you so much, Quincy, for having me. It's such an honor to be here with you, and and talking about the real deal. Definitely, I would say likewise. Thank you for freeCodeCamp, for everything you've done and continue to do for the community. I mean, if anybody's the real deal here, definitely it's you. So thanks for that generous introduction. That article, what inspired it is about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, I decided I wanted to find a way to give back to the developer community, do something where I could take and share my knowledge back. And so I started this newsletter, well, basically a newsletter called Dev Mastery. And I started to get some subscribers through some of my writing. And I started asking, what's your number one obstacle? Like, what's the biggest thing that's in your way? And resoundingly, the answer kept coming back: time. Like, who has the time? There's no time. There's not enough time to learn. There's not enough time to, produce the quality of code that I want to produce. Just no time. And so that's sort of what sparked it. I saw like, okay, there's a great need for me to talk about this. And so I started thinking about it, and I really mined my own experience over the last 20 plus years and being in various different situations, different work environments, different projects, etc. And that's where the article came from. I wanted to address some common misconceptions, around learning. You're having to learn every new fad that's out there, especially in the JavaScript world, where it's like every 10 seconds there's a new thing. So I wanted to address some of the common misconceptions out there, and just put it out there and help people as much as possible. Hopefully I managed to do that.
So speaking of time is always of the essence. I like to think that time is the one thing you can convert time into money by working, and you can use that money to potentially buy yourself the luxuries of, perhaps somebody who's assisting you, perhaps a faster computer, perhaps you can work less because you have more money. So, there are certain trade-offs, but you can't literally convert money into time the way you can convert time into money. It's kind of a one-way transaction. As a result, no matter how much you have going on or how successful you are, there's always still this kind of time pressure that you're talking about. Can you tell us about like how you perceive time? Do you feel like you're constantly running out of time?
So I used to feel that way a lot more than I do now. And I think there's a couple of things. One is what really shoots you in the foot is having an unrealistic expectation of how much you can get accomplished within a certain amount of time. And so what you do is you set yourself up for failure. So like, okay, I have this one day, next week where I have no meetings planned, I have nothing planned. So then suddenly you cram everything, every loose end, everything you ever thought you needed to do into that day. And then the day comes, you do as much as you can. And at the end of it, it's like, well, I got nothing done. And that comes from having an unrealistic expectation of how much you can get done within a certain amount of time. And that really causes this feeling of like, oh my God, like I'm running out of time. I'm never gonna get this done. Another realization is that there's never gonna be nothing to do. Like it's not like you get to the end where it's like, oh, okay, I'm done. Like life is done. Like there's just nothing, there's nothing tomorrow, there's nothing to do. Most of the time it's just, there's always stuff to do. So stressing about like, I have to get all this done, it's never going to all be done. So just get the next thing done and worry about the next thing after that. So those kind of two things are helpful. The other thing is, I think with time, ironically, pun intended maybe, I think with time you gain this sort of perspective, so you can look back and say like, okay, so I felt like I got nothing done. I actually got, if I look back a year, 2 years, 3 years, whoa, I got a ton done. So it adds up. And you can also look back on things that were like, oh my God, I was so stressed. Like I was so stressed and freaking out about getting this thing done on this really self-imposed arbitrary timeline deadline. And it didn't make that much of a difference in the end. Like it seemed like the world would crumble if I didn't get this done. And ultimately, like if it would have been a week later, 2 weeks later, like it just wouldn't have been that big a deal. So I gave myself a lot of heartburn for nothing. And I think those realizations have helped me with that feeling of, oh, I'm running out of time. I'm running out of time. What am I going to do? So I have that less. I still have that, you know, I think that's life, right? There's always going to be stressful moments, but I think I'm better. I haven't reached the full Zen, like in the moment, you know, Taoist kind of state, but yeah, but I mean, it's better.
Yeah, so you no longer feel quite as rushed as you were before, but surely there were some pretty hairy times there. You reference looking back a few years and seeing times when you were just super crunch mode. You talk about a lot of those deadlines and a lot of that stress being completely self-imposed.
I mean,
give me a concrete example, perhaps, just for.
Sure. I mean, I can tell you a bunch. So first, one thing to know about me is I'm naturally kind of a workaholic. Like that's just, it's part of my personality. So I actually have to work on not working as much. But I've I've burnt out or gotten really close to burnout like a number of times, and that's you know, that's part of where these lessons in that article come from. And I think one of the first times, and it probably should have been a real wake up call, and I should have done more about it. But I was living in Toronto at the time, and I was working for a startup. I was like an early employee of a startup, started by a friend of mine. Raised a bunch of money it was like 2002, I think, or something, just as the .com thing was blowing up, like in a bad way, you know, where the bubble was bursting. It's a perfect time to be an early employee at a startup. So that wasn't going as expected. And so I decided that, like, as a plan B escape hatch, I would start an agency and like bootstrap it. So first of all, working at a startup is crazy anyway, because there's not that many people, there's tons of stress, there's tons of pressure. And then I figured, okay, well, that's not enough. So I'm gonna start my own agency on the side and take on, you know, work for clients. And I'm gonna do that at night, while during the day I'm like at this startup. And so my roommate, I'd gotten him a job at the startup with me, so we would go into work together. And so I was not sleeping basically. And so then I got to like where I was hard to wake up in the morning. So he'd be trying to wake me up. And he told me that, like, in my sleep, I'm talking about code. And at that time I was working on like a database problem. And I was like in my sleep mumbling, the primary key, I have to change the primary key to I have to, and he's like, dude, you gotta stop. Like, you don't do anything. I don't go out. I just like, at the computer, 24/7, no sleep, really just brutal. And then I couldn't take it anymore, and then the startup wasn't going where we wanted it to go, and then the client work was ramping up. So I eventually, like, I got rid of the agency. I left the startup, and I ended up, actually at that time, I moved. That's how I ended up back in Ottawa. So my dad lives here. My family, most of my family lives here now. And so I moved back home with my dad. You can imagine. The .com thing like blew up. The startup didn't go the way it was supposed to go. I was supposed to be like, you know, like everybody who was around at that time. I was supposed to be like a multi-millionaire, like Freedom 25, like retired and just awesome. So that didn't happen. So yeah, so like I moved back home, and it was rough. It was rough. And then you know, after that, I think I ended up I got like a government contract or something, and then I ended up like right back in the same situation again. Like it should have been a wake up call, but it wasn't. And I remember, so this manager, I told her, I quoted 8 weeks to do something. It was fairly complex. It was this big enterprise case management system. It was like lots of integration. It was just this is a crazy thing. So I said, it's going to take 8 weeks to do this. And she said, we need it in 2 weeks. And
wow.
And yeah, right. And so one of the reasons she said that to me is partially because she had recognized, I think by that point, that I was not the guy who was going to say no, that I would say yes to whatever. And I talk about that in the article, right? Like I wanted to be the hero. I wanted to be the superstar. And I was just like, yeah, whatever you need, I'm going to do it. And I know as I'm saying yes, that it's impossible to do this thing in 2 weeks. But then I said, okay, you have to approve overtime though. The only way, I'll take one for the team, I'll get it done, but you got to give me like unlimited overtime to do this work. So she was like, done, you got it. If you can deliver for me, you have like carte blanche, just work as much as you want. And this is before kids, before anything. This is, I'm like still living at home with my dad. And so now I'm like living at my desk. And this was in a complex. Like there's a number of buildings, and one of the buildings in the complex was like a hotel. And so I had nights where I stayed at work all night. I would go to the hotel, like get a room, grab a shower, power nap, come back, and keep going, and just work.
Wow.
Work.
So just to give the audience some perspective, like when you say grab a shower and take a power nap, like how much downtime are you talking about in a 24-hour cycle?
Like a couple of hours. Like I would pull like 30-hour stints. Like I was like an insane person. And and considered like I'd fallen asleep at my like in my chair, and just kind of like groggy and wake up and then like code more. And and just like my desk was filled with coffee cups and I didn't get into the energy drinks, but yeah, just lots of coffee cups and stuff. And and it was insane. And I ended up delivering the feature in just under 3 weeks, actually. This 8 weeks of work. I ended up delivering the feature in just under 3 weeks. And I was like, okay, awesome, right? Like we did it. And it was like, yeah, awesome. You did it. It's great. Now I need this next thing. And I was like, well, what? Like, yeah, like now, okay, that was awesome. So the next thing that I need you, this next miracle, I need you to pull off. And then really,
so you realize like, hey, I've got a genie. I'm just going to drive this genie into the ground, basically.
Yeah, it dawned on me that it's like, oh, wait a minute. This is just, all I've done now is just set an expectation. I've also wrecked my credibility because I said it was going to take 8 weeks and I delivered it in 3 weeks. Yeah, okay, I put in some overtime. But now, like, what's my estimate worth? Because, oh yeah, if he says 8 weeks, just give him 2, and he'll get it done.
Oh my gosh!
Right?
Yeah, that is really insidious. That's a terrible.
So I've wrecked my credibility. I've set this insane expectation of this pace that I can't continue. And then eventually, and at first, yeah, like I was the go-to guy, right? Like, yeah, give it to Bill. Bill will get it done. It'll go quick, blah, blah, blah. But then eventually, because you can't sustain that pace. So eventually, like, oh, okay, my code's riddled with like insane bugs. Like, and I'm going back to code that I wrote in the middle of the night on so much caffeine. I don't even know, like, I don't even understand what I wrote. Like, it doesn't make, I'm like, I don't know what this is.
So you're literally like reading the code of an overambitious, underslept, crazy person.
Yeah. I'm reading the code of a maniac, and so I don't know what that guy did, and I'm trying to debug it, and I'm like, I don't know what this is. Like, I wrote it, but I have no clue. And so then eventually, yeah. So now that wears on you, and so now you're no longer able to deliver, and so it's really bad. It's a vicious cycle because now, like, okay, so the expectation was, this bar was set really high. This expectation was set really high. Now you start to not be able to live up to your own sort of reputation, your code starts to be sloppy, and you go from like one end of the spectrum of like, yeah, Bill's the hero, give everything to Bill, to like the other end of the spectrum, like, yeah, Bill's really unreliable. I mean, sometimes he can get it done, sometimes he can't. The code, the quality is a crapshoot. Like, depending on when you get him on a good day, it's great. You get him on a bad day, it's not so great. Blah, blah. And then I watched people around me, and I really started to learn there that the lesson of, okay, it's not the guy who says yes to everything that's going to win. That's going to be that win. That's going to be like regarded as the star forever. They might be the star temporarily, but what happens in a team is it's the person that's consistently reliable ends up emerging as like the star, like the person who says what they're going to do and then does what they say, like all the time, constantly delivering quality on time. But in order to be that person, the only way you can get there is you have to say no, and you have to push back, and you have to hold the line, and you have to, if you say something's going to take 8 weeks, it's going to take 8 weeks. And and that's not to say, the other side of it is you do still have to be a partner with the business. So you can negotiate in terms of scope. You can say like, okay, well, if you only have 2 weeks, let's scope it down to something I can give you in 2 weeks, so that you're still a partner with your client, with your manager, with your business. But yeah, just killing yourself, that doesn't work. And so that was a big lesson. That's something hopefully that comes through in the article as well. But that was a big lesson. And then the third, I know I'm going on here, but the third time where I had a burnout was a different situation. And so I learned those lessons in terms of an individual project, right? So like I was really good at managing managers, managing expectations, being good at delivering. And then I got into this mode where I started taking on, so I built my own little consulting firm, and it's like, often it's just a consulting firm of one. It's just me running around. And I got into this mode where I got in my head that I have to build the business as big as possible. And so I started taking on, like, I had lots of different clients. And so, any one client would have been fine, but I had so many clients and I'd taken on so much, and I was right back into the, like, here we go again. And then I ended up, and it's embarrassing, but I basically, I ended up really under delivering and like just basically flaking on a client and like burning out, and like I couldn't.
It's got to be the worst feeling in the world. I've been there.
It was terrible.
I've had my eyes were bigger than my stomach, so to speak.
Mm.
And I was like, well, this will probably take a whole lot of time, but it's kind of like cramming for a test, right? Like, so that it's going to take N hours to prepare for a test or to get that paper done. But you also know that if you impose some deadline, you're going to work like a maniac and make it work anyway. So why not impose some deadline? Or better yet, why not wait till some external deadline? You're kind of setting a trap for yourself for the future.
Yep.
Right. And that's man. So you ultimately kind of delivered a subpar project to.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably fair to say I didn't deliver. I mean, I'm probably being kind to say I under-delivered. Like it was harsh. I mean, it's one of the, like, it's a low point of my professional life for sure. I had this, I still vividly remember this, like, really awkward, painful elevator ride, going to the meeting where I'm basically going to tell the client, like, look, I mean, he knows, because I've been like uncommunicative and he hasn't seen progress, and like he knows. And so we just had this like awkward, silent elevator ride. He had to come down to the lobby, sign me into the building. We had to then take the elevator up together to sit in his office to have this meeting. And so it's just, yeah. And it's like, I cringe even now. Like, I think about it, I'm getting anxiety. It's just, yeah, this is bad. So I mean, I have the battle scars, and I guess to flip it around, to just try to, I mean, I said a lot in the article, but to try to put a positive spin on it, or try to extract some lessons from it. I think the managing expectations is a huge skill that takes time to learn and to get good at. And it's worth the investment. So like, another thing about, time is, I don't have time to learn and I don't know what to learn. And what I always tell people is, learn the things that, you focus first on things that have broad applicability. So something that you can learn in one context and apply to many other contexts. And, you know, communication skills, skills around like managing expectations and so on, super, super valuable and key lessons to learn.
Yeah. Before we talk about learning new skills, which is really the main focus of the article, I just want to ask you a few more questions about burnout, because this is a topic that I think a lot of people, you hear about burnout and you think, oh, that's not going to happen to me. I'm super disciplined. How do you recognize burnout? Are there any telltale symptoms?
If you're talking about code in your sleep, that's probably probably a good a good signal. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's telltale signals for others. I know for me, at one point, I had an experience where I had to psych myself up to go into the office. So I like would get into the parking lot and be in my car. It's like underground parking of a building. And I'm in my car and like, okay, I'm at work. It's time to get out of my car. And I have to give myself like a pep talk, like to get myself to go in.
Wow.
Like it's okay. It's going to be okay. Just make it through this day. It's going to be okay. And like, so, I mean, and maybe those are signs of that it's too late, but like don't get to that point.
Are there any other leading indicators?
It starts not to be fun anymore. And I'm not saying that like, it's not that it's a party all the time, but you know, I'm someone who enjoys my work, who got into a field that because I like the field, and yeah, and you just start to like not like it at all and just avoid it, and like you can't even find any joy in it anymore. It's like when that starts to happen, when the joy, then maybe that's a problem. When you're here's one, it's gonna get like we're gonna get like NC-17 rating now. If you go to the bathroom and find yourself falling asleep on the toilet,
that's happened to you before?
Almost. Like, not quite, but like you just, any moment of downtime is suddenly like you could just conk out.
Right. So there's like a difference between just being on some sort of crazy death march that your boss put you on that's wearing you out, or just not having a good like work-life balance in terms of like sleeping properly and stuff like that can lead to those kinds of symptoms. But maybe you don't mind so much the fact that things are like that, but like how can you tell when those things are happening and it's because you are genuinely burned out, and or when it's just that you're temporarily overworked? Because burnout kind of, the way I understand it, and I have to say I've never felt it. I'm not that I know of anyway. I've just been very fortunate, and but the way I understand it, at some point, gradually you just become less and less enthusiastic about your day to day.
Yeah, it's the lack of joy. The indicator, the difference is the joy. So like, yeah, there's been times where I've been gung-ho about a project and like worked my butt off and been tired, like been like genuinely like, okay, I'm tired. But that's very different. Like I'm tired, but like I'm still excited to get this thing done. Like I know I'm working hard and I know I'm gonna need a break at some point, but like I'm into it. So like I wake up, instead of having to talk myself into going into the office, I have to talk myself into taking a break because I'm so like into it. So that's very different. And then you can work long hours and you can go. But when there's that, so you're tired, but there's still that flame, that passion there, that like enthusiasm, that's a totally different thing. So you might, then you just need a break. Like you just, okay, you're just tired, or you just need a break. So then maybe you're falling asleep at your chair. Okay, take a break, but there's still joy. When the joy goes away, when you start to disassociate from, like, you don't see your friends anymore, you don't, it's not that you don't have time to do anything else, it's that you don't want even to do anything else. That's for me anyway, my experience, that's the difference.
Yeah, and you talk in your article about scheduling downtime, scheduling trips. How do you know when to schedule a trip?
Yeah, so it's like trial and error. I'm in a really good place right now for that. So like I end up doing about three trips a year, like every third of the year, spaced out in like 4 months. And so one trip will be I'll go to a conference that's around a hobby, like not necessarily anything to do with code. And then my wife will join me at some point. Like it's usually about photography. I'm kind of into taking pictures, so I'll go to like a photography conference or something. It has nothing to do with my job, and then my wife will join me at the end or at the beginning, and we'll have like a mini vacation. And then another trip will just be like me and my wife, maybe around our anniversary we'll go somewhere. And then there's like a family week long, and it tends to end up being Disney World, but there's like a family long trip. So I'm fortunate. I've gotten to a place where I can do that, and then I try to have like a scheduled date night every 2 to 3 weeks. I try to have like an evening where I'm just like, I know I'm not gonna work at all, and I just put it in my calendar like Friday night, forget it. I don't care what I have to do. It's just like shutting everything off, and like I'm gonna binge on Netflix or something, so it's like so I do that. But I think it's trial and error, and I imagine it's probably different for everybody. I don't think there's like some guideline, like for every X days of work, take out Y days of vacation.
Have you ever been in a situation where you've just recognized, like, I'm burning out, like, oh no, it kind of creeps in while you're at the keyboard and you're like, wait a second, I'm starting to feel like I'm burning out. Do you ever like take emergency downtime?
I have. I've done that, and I've actually straight up said to like clients and stuff, I've just been like, okay, I'm taking, Friday, I'm taking the day off. I need to take it off. It's like, I guess if you want me at my best, this Friday I'm not gonna be here, and then like put stuff away and go for a walk. That's another thing too. And again, I'm sure it's different for other people, but like going outside,
like, where?
Like nature. Yeah. What's that for? Yeah, typical coders, right? Like super pale skin and just like, what is the outside? But yeah, like during the day, like when there's still light out, and like finding like some nature and just like walking around, and trying not to think about work when doing that. That was really surprisingly quite helpful. Sometimes it's hard because where I live, if it's like February or something, you don't want to be walking around outside at all. But yeah, I find that's helpful.
So one of the things when you're constantly squeezed for time, like it sounds like you've gotten better about this by saying no, by taking scheduled downtime. But as a developer, one of the key parts of the job description, so to speak, is to constantly pick up new technologies and stay kind of on the edge of the state of the art and pick up the new tools. You talk about this a little bit in your article, but you talk about kind of how to decide when to learn a new technology or how to spend your time improving yourself and improving your development skills. What are some things that you've learned over the years specific to deciding whether to pick up a new tool?
Yeah, so I think so the lessons there. First, I'll say this: you're absolutely right that as a developer, like this is just one of those jobs where you're expected to be like a lifelong learner. So there's no question. Like, I never want to be misinterpreted as saying like don't learn or you don't need to spend time learning. You absolutely do. And I find even if you schedule as little as like 25 minutes a day of just like reading or and it doesn't have to be a day, but a few days a week, just 25 minutes of like reading or experimenting or trying something, get a little pet project going, that really, really adds up. So I think sometimes we put pressure on ourselves to like, okay, I need to learn this entire new framework like this afternoon, rather than like, okay, like this is something that's on the horizon that I should check out. And then in terms of a big difference comes in what you choose to learn. Makes a huge difference. So I talked a little bit before about this idea of broad applicability. So, when you learn something that can be applied in lots of different contexts, then it pays huge dividends, and it actually helps you learn other things. So like a big part of learning is if you have a point of reference or a frame of reference, for what you're learning, it goes faster. So to get really specific though, in terms of like code, I talk a lot about learning the fundamentals. And I think there's 2 or 3 kind of what I consider really fundamental pieces of knowledge or I don't know, books, catalogs that you should know. So one of them is this design patterns. So there's this this book called Design Patterns, Elements of Reusable something like that. Elements.
Is that the Gang of Four book?
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, there's this called the Gang of Four patterns because it's like 4 authors, and learning that is super helpful because it's not really, it's specific to any language that's object oriented in any way. So it's not a book about Java or a book about PHP. These are patterns that are everywhere, and once you know them, first it gives you like a vocabulary. So I'll give you a really good example of that. So recently I started picking up the reactive extensions framework. So the JavaScript flavor of it is RxJS, but reactive extensions is a library that is actually available in lots and lots of languages. So there's implementations for Java, for C#, for Ruby, for PHP. It's like it's being adopted all over the place. And the first, I think if you go to like reactivex.io, the opening paragraph describes what it is, and it describes it using 2 of these Gang of Four patterns. So it says it's a mix of the observer pattern and the iterator pattern. And if you know those patterns, that immediately means something to you, and you immediately have like a frame of reference that makes learning this library, even though it's completely new, a lot easier, because it just like you start to see the patterns. Another example of that is so Redux. When Redux came out, right, this is the whole in the JavaScript world and the React world especially, this Redux made a huge splash, right? So when I was learning Redux, what I saw right away, and it comes from the whole Flux architecture, is this the command pattern, right? So it's a command pattern. So you send an object that represents a command, basically. They call them actions, right? But that's what that is. And so once you know those patterns, you start to see them everywhere, and then you can have this frame of reference that makes learning new things easier. The other key thing is Martin Fowler has a book, and now he's put it online. It's refactoring.com. If you go there, there's a catalog, and it's a catalog of refactorings, and he just gives you this list of like 60 things that you can do to code, in different scenarios to kind of refactor your code, to improve it, to make it better. And knowing that catalog is super helpful, especially when you're looking at code, because then you go, oh, okay, here's what I could do here's how I could make this piece of code better, because you have this catalog in your mind. You have these like this toolbox of tricks. And then also when you're learning something else and you see the code samples, or you see what else, you understand the motivation behind, oh, okay, so I kind of get, these guys really like this particular type of pattern or this particular type of refactoring, and then you see it everywhere, and you kind of like get in the mindset of that library or framework. So yeah, so fundamentals I think are big, and concentrating on things that have broad applicability. Those are 2 that are really like, code centric. There's broader things like communication skills, writing, ability to write. A lot of tech people don't like writing and are not good at writing, but ability to write and ability to communicate pay huge dividends in your career, even if you have like a techie coder career. So those things. And then the next thing I would say is there's a set of tools or technologies that if you're working in the field that you're kind of using every day, and when those things get updated, it's worthwhile like keeping up to date with that. So like if you call yourself a .NET developer, and that's what's on your resume, but you haven't touched anything past version 4.0, because wherever you're working, they're on version 4.0, so you don't know anything about .NET Core, you don't know anything about 5.0, you haven't kept up, then it's going to be really damaging, because if you're trying to get some movement in your career and you've got .NET developer on your resume, people expect that whatever's current. And so if you don't know that, it starts to become really career limiting and problematic. So those technologies that are part of your core stack that you use every day in your job, keep up to date. Even if your employer's not up with the latest one, you should really be up with the latest one. And then the third thing I would say in terms of discerning and choosing is, focus on things that are backed by large large companies, backed by
Right.
by
So
big
open source
names.
projects like Angular, for example, or React.
Yeah, because the fact is, it's not, and sometimes people misinterpret this. It's not because they're instantly going to be better than something that some guy in his garage came up with. Like, there's geniuses all over the place, but the difference is they've got the staying power, the money, the marketing mojo. They've got a lot more runway with those kind of frameworks and tools and technologies to make it good, but also to get traction and to gain adoption, right? And it's going to be documented way better. It's going to be marketed way better. It's going to be supported way better. There's going to be a community around it, etc. And then the other thing that's really true and is a trend in our industry, right, is if some just random startup comes up with some framework that is like really great and revolutionary, the big guys will either steal it or buy it at some point.
Right.
Anyway,
I mean,
so
Redux, case in point.
here you go.
Got it
Yeah.
acqui-hired, I guess, by or it wasn't really an acqui-hire. It was just a hire. They hired him
Yeah.
because Redux was already open source.
So and that's a big thing. Like, don't stuff that's like no name tech that's flash in the pan. It's going to be gone. So don't don't focus your energy there.
Right. So just to recap all the many things you said. First of all, Gang of Four design pattern book is one of the two main things that you said. The other is refactoring.com. Martin Fowler, of course, is an excellent educator in software development and agile. And skills, writing. Just a couple quick anecdotes I'll throw in. Having typos on your resume is statistically, based on my friend Aileen's research, the number one thing that makes people discard your resume. And two, Paul Graham, the guy who created Y Combinator, one of the co-founders, and an influential essayist, has said that he recommends people who don't speak English as a native language, that the number one thing that they prioritize is making their pronunciation, either like British or North American English. I guess technically it could be like Australian English, but some very standardized form of English so that people can understand you. Because if people have difficulty understanding, people are lazy and they're not going to, it's going to be this expenditure of effort for them to try to understand you. So just by putting time into improving your pronunciation, improving your English, and improving your writing, you can significantly increase the impact you're likely to make and the likelihood that you're going to get contracts or get jobs. So I just want to echo Bill's advice there. Absolutely do spend time on communication skills.
And also, fair or not, like, it's just an observation of mine, and it's probably not fair, but people completely judge your intelligence based on your communication skills. Like you're a good communicator can seem far more intelligent than someone who's maybe a lot smarter than them but doesn't have good communication skills. And I'm even guilty of, many years ago, I worked with a guy who was painfully shy, afraid to say words, and just brutally shy. And I completely underestimated him because of that. And I only realized it when, so I had, at this point I was doing a bit of architecture. So I had done the design for a particular component in the system. And he had a question about it, and he came to ask me about it. And he'd drawn out how he understood what my design was. And then he had some questions. And when we had that interaction, it was still an awkward interaction, because every interaction with this guy was awkward. And he's just like I don't know if I can express how painfully shy he was. But when I had that interaction based on what he drew and what he was asking me, I realized, oh my God, this guy's actually quite capable and very, very bright, and like almost understands this thing better than I understand it. It's like, these are like excellent questions. And I was like, whoa, I really caught myself, and I was like, wow, I just really underestimated this guy solely based on the fact that he has a hard time talking and a hard time expressing himself. So yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
So I'm going to go ahead and jump to some questions from our live audience. We still have a lot of people watching. First of all, Samuel Singer wanted to thank you for mentioning refactoring.com. He said it looks amazing. Some questions real quick. Wendy wanted to know what your astrological sign is. Interesting question.
That's yeah. So ask Wendy. I don't know how live this is. If we're gonna get if there's a delay, but what does she think? Because I'm very curious. As I'm not a big believer in astrology, but I just if it's meaningful, then you should be able to peg me, right?
Right. Okay. So Wendy, if you're still watching, what do you think his zodiac sign is?
Yeah.
All right. So some more serious questions. How do you motivate yourself when you see people around you who are just screaming ahead, and you feel like you're so far behind everybody else? That's what Arshad Khan is asking.
Yeah, it's you really have to rid yourself of the comparative mindset where you're comparing yourself to other people. You need to compare yourself to yourself. So you need to look at where you are now versus where you were before, and you need to strive to improve yourself. For a couple of reasons. One is you can, it's so arbitrary. It's just human psychology, right? You're arbitrarily choosing those people who are, who you perceive to be doing better than you. You could very easily just arbitrarily choose people who are doing way worse than you and suddenly feel really good about yourself. Like it doesn't, there's, no matter where you are, there's people who are going to be like, you're going to perceive to be like way, way, way behind you. And there's people you're going to perceive to be like way, way, way ahead of you. And then the other thing is you never really know like what's going on with someone else. So the external appearance might be, genuinely, they may be like in their career way, way ahead of you, but then their personal life is like a train wreck and you're way ahead of them or whatever it may be. But in any case, there's just no point in comparing yourself to others and then causing yourself to feel bad because of where someone else is. And I mean, and if you need to compare yourself to someone else, well, then just arbitrarily choose to compare yourself to somebody who's way worse off than you and then feel good. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter. What matters is like, okay, where were you before and where are you now? And are you going in the direction that you want to be going in? And whether you're there or not, it doesn't matter. But are you moving? Are you closer today than you were yesterday? And if the answer is yes, then that's good. And if your answer is no, well, then that's an opportunity to look at that and try to figure out, well, why? So what happened? And maybe a day is too short, but a week, a year, a month, whatever. Pick a time scale that makes sense for you and compare to yourself and just make sure you're constantly moving in the right direction.
On that topic of kind of scoring yourself, we had an excellent question. How do you go about scoring yourself? And early on, when you first started, this is a question from Daniel Stockman. How did you measure your own performance? And did you have any sort of specific concrete goals that you were measuring yourself by, or any key performance indicators, or
yeah?
How did you know you were advancing?
So it's a bit of a difficult question for me to answer or to give a good answer to, because I have a kind of an unusual, like I got started in an unusual way in the sense that I wrote my first lines of code at 6 years old because my dad was like a computer guy. And then later on, like when I was a teenager in the like 90s, like we were one of the first people to have like computers and internet or whatever. And I think I clicked a link somewhere that said like how to write HTML or something. And I was into computers the whole time. And I think there was like, I don't know, 5 tags or some silly thing like that. And so I kind of learned that out of interest. And then because my dad was in this industry and people started asking him about, this thing called a web page, and like, can you build a web page, or can you put this stuff on the internet for me? And he was like, hey, you're playing with that web stuff? Yeah. Yeah, I am. Can you like build a web page? Yeah, for sure I can. Totally. I clicked on a link. And he's like, well, I have this client who wants some stuff put on. And when you're like a dopey teenager or whatever, like I was like, yeah, I can do anything. Sure. Give it to me. Like I almost didn't know what I didn't know. So it's hard for me to answer, because I imagine like, somebody who's trying to attack this like as a second career, or who's already an adult, who's lost that kind of teenage sort of hubris and is experienced a bit of life, is going to be in a really different place. So I didn't really have that. So I guess the only way I can answer it is in terms of now, like scoring myself. I'll answer it this way, in terms of just how do I know when I know something, or how do I know when I've acquired a particular skill? And so for me, it's testing myself and trying to apply things in a different context. So in a really like sort of low level or small example is like, let's say I'm doing a tutorial for trying to learn something new, and they give me a bit of code to do as part of the tutorial. And so I copy the code and I get it to work the way the tutorial says. Before I move to the next thing, I'll actually try to make a change and predict what the outcome of that change will be. Like if I know it, I should be able to like predict how this change is going to affect the output. And so like a really dumb, like rudimentary example, just to get the point across, is like if you're doing a hello world, right? So it shows you how to do hello world, you write hello world, and then you think to yourself, okay, well, what if I wanted it to say hello Bob? So, okay, I would change world to Bob and then run that, and well, look, okay, so I guess I understand sort of what's going on. So that kind of thing. I don't know that really answers the question, but that's, like I said, like
if I can recap what you said, if you can put yourself in the mentality of a teenager, an invincible teenager,
sure,
and just throw yourself into whatever. Sure, I can do this. And I'll be honest, this is basically how I handled learning to code to some extent. I would go to these hackathons every weekend. I'd go to a hackathon, meet a bunch of strangers, join their team, and promptly like basically throw myself into the fire. And of course, like, did my best. Worst case scenario, these people are going to want to talk to me again. But really, like, I learned a ton. And I mean,
sure,
really, people are pretty forgiving. They understand. Like, they know I'm learning the code, and I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And that really hurts, is when you don't know what you don't know, and then you hit these huge walls. But those become fewer and fewer as you kind of get like a baseline.
Oh, so I want to say something about that the hitting the walls thing, because it's something that I've observed, and I'm trying to help people, and so I've kind of if you hit a wall, like if you're learning and you hit a wall, it's because you need the right combination of theory and practice. And so if you hit a wall, it's because you have too little of one or the other. I don't know if that's making sense to you, but basically, like you're plodding along. There's that meme that goes around where it's like, how to draw an owl, and then there's like, 2 circles, and then fill in the rest of the owl. And a lot of people compare that to like every coding course ever. It's like, it's really easy. I'm plodding along, and then suddenly you hit this wall, or you get to this point where it's like, oh my god, like how the difficulty just completely ramped up. And it's because either your learning to that point has been too practical, you've been too focused on the practical, so you don't actually have the underlying theory, the understanding to get you to the next level, or you've spent too much time on the theory, so you understand everything in theory, but you haven't tried it enough, you haven't played with it enough to understand how to put that theory into practice. So one just piece of advice is check yourself. If you hit a wall, go back like a half step and fill in the gap, in terms of, if the gap is like, do I really understand the theory behind what I did, or am I just able to reproduce it because I'm practically coding? Or fill in the gap of, yeah, I read a bunch about this topic or this concept, but I never actually tried to use it before going on to the next concept. So go back and now try to apply your knowledge about the previous concept before going to the next step. So anyway, whatever.
On the topic of building theoretical knowledge, Obayanju Damilare, I hope I'm pronouncing your name even slightly right, wanted to know whether you think programming books are a good supplement, and maybe whether they'll improve your the depth with which you understand coding.
So I'll say yes. I mean, I like books, but it's also because when I was originally learning, there was that one link online of how to write HTML, but like it was nowhere near this landscape that we have now with like the amount of educational tools. So it might just be I'm prejudiced because of the era that I came up in, but I do think there's a certain amount of depth that you get in a book if you follow a book end to end, that you don't necessarily get if you're just jumping from like one article to another, or one website to another, or one tutorial to another. So I do think that books are useful. If you want some recommendations of books that are I find really useful. Oh, sorry, what?
Oh,
You're waving like, okay. I thought you were giving me like the, yeah.
I was sitting on my floor for a long time.
No worries. So the recommendations of books, a lot of the Bob Martin books are really good. So like clean code.
Right, a ton of
I really liked.
Everybody recommends that book, by the way.
Yeah, it's really good. TDD by example, Kent Beck. If you want to get a bit deeper, patterns of enterprise application architecture by Martin Fowler. You're getting heavy though. That and enterprise integration. There's another Martin Fowler book specifically about integration patterns. If you read that book, it's incredible, because it has that, like, it's a big book, but it's got like all these integration patterns, and then later in your life, like in your code, you'll run into almost all of them, and you'll be like, oh, I know what this is. Oh, hey, this is like a messaging pattern. I get that. So yeah, anyway, those are really good. But in terms of like recent good books, yeah, Clean Code is probably at the top of the list. Bob Martin has a new book coming out soon called Clean Architecture, I think. But it's about his architecture methodology, and I think it's really useful. Having said that, though, I don't know how much time you have, but
take all the time you need, man.
Thanks. So one of the problems with learning theory or getting into these big heavy books is if you get into them like cold or in the abstract, they're really a slog. Like, they're really hard to get through. And what I'm realizing more and more as I'm trying to help other people is, the analogy I use is this. So let's say, for example, you go to like a magic show, right? And you sit down, and then the lights fade, and then suddenly, papa, music, big light comes on, the magician comes out in his, like, shiny jacket with his beautiful assistant, and then he says, ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to do an amazing trick for you, but first let me explain to you how this trick works. And then he spends like an hour going through like every detail and showing you, like, and here's the trap door behind the box, and here's the and then like an hour later, he finally does the magic trick. That's like probably the worst magic show ever that you could possibly imagine, right? Because it's like,
absolutely.
Oh my God, how boring. Yeah. It's how boring, and you're just sitting there through this slog of an explanation. But on the other hand, if he comes out and he does like an amazing trick, and then says, hey, do you want to know how I did that? Right? Suddenly you will sit through that hour-long explanation, because you're like, what? That was like a mind-blowing trick. Like, I don't even know how that's possible that you just did that. Yeah, and if you have a curious mind, you're gonna be like, yeah, like how does that work? And then you're gonna be riveted by them showing you the trap door and showing you the right. And it's the same information, it's just in a different order. And so that's where I think learning has to get to. Like, I think the problem with, like, not to slag on university, and I haven't been there in years, so maybe it's all different now. But the problem was that, like,
unfortunately,
yeah, but the problem was, like, it's all this theory that you're just hitting cold. So you registered for a course, and you're sitting there, and the professor's like on and on and on and on, and theory, as opposed to showing you, like, hey, look at this awesome thing I can make a computer do, and you're going, what? How did you do that? And then going, okay, now let me tell you. So I think it's got to be, you have to almost jump in first, and you have to show the magic trick first before you explain the magic. And so those books are really good, but you have to come to those books after you've, like, been in it for a little while, and then built up that curiosity of, like, oh, I wonder how does this like actually work? Like, how come there's this huge code? If you've lived inside of a huge code base that was not optimally designed, and many of them just aren't, and then you felt like this incredible pain, and then but you look and you go, how are there's other huge code bases out there that somehow don't fall apart and, like, don't, like, explode the second you breathe on the keyboard to change something. Like, how does how does that occur? And then you get curious, and then you can jump into these books about architecture and patterns and stuff, and you're going to grab them with some gusto, because you're going to be like, okay, give me the answers now, because you've lived a bit of pain and you've built up some curiosity. So, and that's what I would say about that.
Awesome. So I've got some rapid fire questions, just
sure,
super quick, but these are good questions from our audience. First of all, to get back to Wendy's question, she thinks, and she's got like a 1 in 12 chance of getting this right.
Yeah.
Maybe more if there's any actual correlation between behavior and an astrological symbol. She thinks you're an Aquarius.
No, I'm a Leo. So
Leo.
There you
okay.
Go. Same birthday as Bill Clinton. There you go. So,
okay.
For anybody who's curious, they can look that up and figure it
out. Next, what would you say is a good field of software development to go into if you want a little bit more stability? This is a question from Osman Ernara. Thank you for the question, Osman. What would be a good, relatively stable field where you could go pretty deep on a subject without having to constantly learn new technology?
Yeah, it's less the field. It's more the type of organization. Work for a really, really large corporation as a software developer, because the pace is a lot slower. The pace of change is a lot slower. You can like get really deep and specialize in something and take your time and have a good balance. You know, the opposite end of the spectrum is a startup or an agency. Yeah, the pace there can be pretty crazy, depending on the model of the agency that you're working for. Some agencies, their whole business model is just like, you know, undercut on price, deliver as quickly as possible, and then make all of your money on those kind of like change requests after and like fixing it. So it's actually it's built into their business model to put things out there that are less than ideal. And that's obviously not all agencies, like by any stretch, but anyway, a really good thing to do is to really understand the business model of who you're working for, and that'll guide you more so than like, you know, game development versus web development, etc.
Okay, so just to reiterate that, because that's very important, I think, counterintuitive advice. It's not the field you're going into, it's specifically the employer you're going to work for and what their incentives are and what their long-term goals are.
Yeah, and when I say big corporation, like I don't mean like Google or Microsoft. I mean like, although even there you'd be surprised, because they're so big, they do get into this space where there's lots of people who are just specialized and narrow and are not under the crazy deadlines. But yeah, like a large insurance company, a large bank, a large telecom company, you know, if you're working for them, like stuff's not going to change on you every 5 seconds. You can like entrench yourself. You can have a life. Yeah, it's just a different pace. And
follow-up question on that: is there a specific? And this is oh man, I could look through and find out exactly who asked. Whoever asked, thanks for asking this. But is there a specific tool that you would say specifically lends itself well to these types of kind of slower moving, less stressful types of jobs, like at the telecoms and at the banks?
Yes and no. I mean, a lot of that stuff now also is moving into, and I don't know if this is an area that's going to interest a lot of people, but it's moving into using these big platforms, and then becoming a developer that's living on top of the platform. So what I mean by that is like a Salesforce.com, Siebel, Dynamic CRM, you know, SAP. These like massive platforms that are highly customizable. And so you end up coding, but you end up coding over top of, you know, someone else's like big large platform. That stuff is pretty stable and pretty slow moving. And then if you become knowledgeable and an expert, and you know, you can work for like these super large companies. And yeah, that's in terms of tooling, that's what lends itself to it. So And the big ones are things like, SAP, Siebel, PeopleSoft, and these big enterprise resource planning softwares. If you want to go even to like, more medium enterprise, things like NetSuite, things like Salesforce.com, those things, if you become a platform developer or specialist in those, it's a different pace and different style for sure.
Awesome. Well, I think we've all got a lot to digest. I'm going to strongly recommend that everybody check out Bill's article if you haven't read it. He's got a ton of awesome articles, like I said, and he regularly writes just jaw-dropping, amazing articles.
Oh, thank you.
Bill's goal seems to be, from where I'm sitting, to take his 20 plus years of experience and all the best practices he's embraced, which he's serious about code quality, he's serious about testing, he's serious about agile software development. Like basically, he eats, sleeps, and breathes best practices and tries to apply them. Yeah. I mean, more so than most developers I know, certainly. And the great thing about Bill, I'll just say, is like, he seems to be as much a spring chicken as far as like being excited by all this stuff as somebody who's just learning to code.
I like it. I just want to give one quick super plug. Devmastery.com, which is a terrible website on purpose because I thought it would motivate me to build a better one, but it hasn't. But if you go to devmastery.com, what you can do is you can sign up for my newsletter, and I send out stuff every week. So the kind of stuff that I've just talked about, but also lots of links and resources and stuff. And the newsletter has really, really grown. And, I think it's definitely worth checking out. So the best way to sign up is just devmastery.com. Or if you check out those articles, I think in most of them, I have some way to get into that newsletter.
I'm going to add it to the notes below so people can just
go great.
Through.
Awesome.
And just to make sure everybody...
terrible.
Just to make sure everybody knows, like I read Bill's newsletters every week too. There are only a few newsletters that I regularly read, but every time I get one from Bill, I either open it and read it real quick, or I save it for later when I don't have time, because he recommends all kinds of awesome, pretty advanced topics, and also just sometimes some really cool kind of just fun reads about technology. So I also strongly recommend you sign up for his Dev Mastery email blasts. And Bill, thank you again for joining us. Thank you everyone in the live audience for sticking around. I mean, it's Saturday night. You could be asleep. You could be watching Saturday Night Live. You could be doing a lot of things, right? And instead, you're here chilling with us, and that means so much to us. So. Thank you again for joining us, Bill, and everyone have a beautiful evening.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye.